There is a person in your life right now, or maybe someone long gone, who haunts your thoughts, who lives in the background of every room you enter. You act like you don't care. You speak with calm detachment, but deep within, you are obsessed. This message is for you. Today, I'm not here to entertain you. I'm not here to give you surface-level comfort. I'm here to rip the curtain away from a quiet epidemic, a condition of the soul that hides behind silence, distance, and control. It's called avoidant attachment. And the one person avoidants cannot stop thinking about is the very one they fear the most. If you've ever pushed someone away only to crave their presence, if you've ever felt safe only when alone yet starved for connection, if you've ever loved someone in secret while rejecting them in reality, then I urge you, do not leave this room, because what I will share today could free your heart, transform your relationships, and awaken your soul. Avoidants are obsessed with one person. Let's uncover who it is, and why that obsession holds the key to your healing. Avoidants are often misunderstood. On the surface, they appear calm, independent, and self-contained. People who don't need much from others, who seem content to walk alone. They may come across as emotionally distant or even cold, but that exterior is a carefully constructed wall, a survival mechanism built brick by brick over years of avoiding vulnerability. Inside, behind those defenses, something quite different is happening. Deep down, avoidants are obsessed. Not with many people, not with crowds or admiration, but with one particular person. A person who stirs something in them they can't fully control or understand. The hidden obsession isn't with fame, power, or even affection. It's with the one who made them feel unsafe in their control and safe in their surrender, all at once. This person is not just anyone. They are usually emotionally available, grounded, consistent, someone who, by their very presence, challenges the avoidance worldview. The avoidant doesn't obsess over people who are chaotic, unpredictable, or equally avoidant. No, they become fixated on someone who is steady, someone who doesn't play games, but who waits, listens, and offers love that doesn't demand, but simply is. This confuses the avoidant. They are used to relationships where they can hide, where distance feels like power. But this person sees them, not the mask, not the image, but the heart beneath. And that terrifies them. It terrifies them because it draws them. And they don't know how to be drawn without losing themselves. That is the essence of the obsession, an internal war between desire and defense. The avoidant cannot stop thinking about this person because they represent something forbidden yet desperately needed. The promise of closeness without chaos, intimacy without fear. But closeness threatens to expose the avoidant's deepest lie, that they don't need anyone. So they push this person away, even as they hold them tight in their imagination. They sabotage the relationship, invent reasons to leave, find faults, start fights. Then they replay every word, every look, every moment after it's over, haunted by what could have been. This obsession is not visible on the surface. Avoidants rarely talk about it. They often deny it even to themselves, but it shows up in their silence, in their social media lurking, in their dreams, in the way they compare every new connection to the one that got too close. It shows up in their inability to move on, their restless spirit, their longing without direction. This is not just romantic, it can be parental, platonic, or even spiritual. The avoidant fixates on the one who disrupted their pattern, the one who brought them to the edge of change. And the deeper truth is this: the obsession is not really about the other person. It's about what they represent, the possibility of being known and still loved. The avoidant is obsessed because part of them still believes that if they could just be close without losing themselves, they would finally be free. Avoidants live in a constant push-pull dynamic, caught between craving intimacy and fearing it. This is why the person they are obsessed with is often the one they can never seem to fully embrace or entirely let go. The paradox of pursuit and retreat defines their emotional experience. They may not even understand it themselves. They are drawn to someone who awakens in them a yearning for connection, someone who makes them feel seen, wanted, even safe. But as soon as that connection begins to feel real, as soon as intimacy deepens, panic sets in. The avoidant feels cornered, like a part of themselves is about to be invaded or consumed, and so they retreat. But the retreat is not the end. In fact, it is just the beginning of the obsession. Because once they pull away, the longing intensifies. The same person they distance themselves from becomes the center of their mental and emotional world. They can't stop thinking about them. They remember their voice, their kindness, their patience. They replay old conversations, imagine future ones, and build scenarios in their mind where maybe, just maybe, they could make it work, if only it didn't feel so threatening. This internal back and forth creates a psychological loop that's hard to break. It's important to understand that this isn't just indecision or confusion. It's a coping mechanism rooted in fear. The avoidant believes, often subconsciously, that closeness leads to pain, that letting someone in means eventually being hurt, abandoned, or controlled. This belief is not easily challenged, especially when it was formed in childhood or through past trauma. So when someone comes along who offers genuine love or emotional presence, the avoidant instinctively recoils. They may ghost, withdraw, criticize, or emotionally shut down. But even as they do this, they are mentally holding on with a grip of steel. The obsession grows in the absence. The more distance they create, the more idealized the other person becomes. This individual now out of reach becomes the fantasy of safety, the what if, the symbol of a life they both desire and fear. And yet, should the person return or reach out again, the same pattern will likely repeat, because the internal issue has not been resolved. The avoidant is still operating from fear, still trapped in the belief that love equals loss of self. This cycle can last for years. It's emotionally exhausting and often deeply confusing for both people involved. The pursued person may feel like they are being toyed with, when in fact the avoidant is deeply tormented, fighting a battle between love and fear, connection and control. The obsession becomes a kind of prison, a longing they cannot satisfy, and a closeness they cannot tolerate. And the cruelest part is that the avoidant often believes this is just who they are. They do not realize that their pattern is a wound, not a destiny. The person an avoidant becomes obsessed with is not random. It's not about looks, status, charm, or wit. It's about something much deeper, something almost spiritual. It's about the one who sees through them, the one who looks past their carefully constructed walls, their aloof responses, their feigned independence, and sees the frightened, yearning heart beneath. Avoidants spend their lives crafting personas of strength and self-sufficiency. They present themselves as people who don't need anyone, who are in control, who are unaffected. But the person they become obsessed with is the one who doesn't buy it, not out of arrogance, not to expose them, but because they simply see them. To be seen is terrifying for the avoidant, and yet it is also magnetic. On some level, they crave it. They long for someone to witness their true self, not the performance, but the soul. And when someone does, when someone responds not with judgment but with love, not with pressure but with patience, it shakes them. It destabilizes the fortress they've lived in for years. Most people in their lives engage with the surface-level version of them, the distant, cool, emotionally guarded version. But this person, the one they obsess over, refuses to relate only to that mask. They wait, they listen, they love in a way that feels disarming. That's what makes them unforgettable. There is a kind of power in being truly seen. It strips away the games, the distancing tactics, the rationalizations. The avoidant can no longer pretend that they are untouched by affection. They can't hide behind their usual logic. This person has reached them, not by force, not by manipulation, but by simply being present, by refusing to play along with the narrative that says, "I don't need anyone." The avoidant begins to realize, maybe for the first time, that they are deeply known, and not just known, but chosen. That moment when they feel seen and still accepted is the moment the obsession begins. Because such encounters are rare, precious, and destabilizing, the avoidant doesn't know what to do with it. Part of them wants to run, to restore the distance, to regain the feeling of control. But another part, the deeper, more honest part, wants to stay, wants to soften, wants to believe this connection could be safe. This internal conflict gives rise to the obsession. They pull away, but their heart stays. They try to forget, but they remember more vividly. They avoid, but they are magnetized. And all the while they measure every future connection against the one who saw them. No one else quite measures up. No one else brings that same unsettling peace, that sense of being known and yet not condemned. They may even enter new relationships, but deep inside, the shadow of that one person lingers. Not because they were perfect, but because they broke the illusion. They proved that the avoidant could be loved without performing. And once you've been seen like that, it's impossible to unsee it. At the very heart of the avoidant's inner world is a silent, screaming paradox: the fear of being known. This fear is not shallow or superficial. It is ancient, often rooted in early experiences where vulnerability led to rejection, punishment, or emotional abandonment. So they learned to survive by hiding, not just physically or socially, but emotionally. They trained themselves to detach from their own needs, to mute their longings, to stay safe behind walls of control. Yet within this guarded existence, one person eventually appears. And this person does something incredibly dangerous. They try to truly know them. This triggers the greatest fear an avoidant carries, because to be known is to be exposed, and exposure feels like death to someone who has spent their life trying to disappear emotionally. But there's more to the story. That same person who ignites fear also becomes the object of obsession. Why? Because they don't just pose a threat. They awaken a deep and desperate hope. The hope that someone could know them and not leave. That someone could see their flaws, their contradictions, their brokenness, and stay. That hope terrifies them just as much as it draws them in. So the avoidant fights, not just the person but the feelings. They tell themselves it's not real. They criticize, rationalize, withdraw, but nothing works. The more they try to suppress the longing, the more it surfaces, and it surfaces in strange ways. Compulsive thoughts, intrusive memories, a constant scanning of their phone, a fixation on what they said, what they did, what they meant. They analyze every interaction, not because they care a little, but because they care too much. And they hate that they care. They hate it because it means they're not in control. It means someone got inside. And for avoidance, control isn't a preference, it's a shield. A shield against disappointment, against chaos, against being dependent on anyone ever again. To need someone is in their mind to be weak. And yet, here is this person, and they need them. Not in the sense of desperation, but in the sense that their presence stirs something essential, something vital, something that whispers, "You don't have to be alone anymore." But the avoidant can't trust that voice. It sounds too much like the promises that were broken before, so they shut it down. But shutting it down doesn't erase the imprint this person has left. If anything, the distance only makes it stronger. The absence becomes a canvas for obsession. They imagine the conversations they never had. They feel the regret of words left unspoken. They rehearse arguments and reconciliations in their mind, all of it tied to one root issue. They are terrified of being known, and even more terrified that they might never be known again, and so they stay stuck, paralyzed between the fear of being revealed and the longing to be seen. The obsession is not about the person's traits or actions. It is about what their presence exposes, the deep, unresolved hunger to be loved without masks, to be truly known and not abandoned. Avoidants walk through life wearing masks so convincingly that even they forget what lies beneath. They project strength, composure, even indifference. But behind that facade is a soul in conflict, a soul that feels more than it dares to show. And when they meet the one who awakens those feelings, the one they cannot quite dismiss or replace, the result is not just longing, it is silent suffering. Because avoidants don't express obsession the way others might. They won't beg, plead, or chase. Instead, they suffer in secret, tormented by what they've lost or pushed away. Unable to stop thinking about it, yet unwilling to reach for it again. This suffering isn't loud. It doesn't cry out or announce itself. It simmers, quietly beneath the surface. It's the ache they feel in the quiet of the night, the heaviness that settles over them when their phone remains silent, the sharp pull in their chest when they see a reminder of that person. But rather than share these feelings, they bury them. They distract themselves with work, hobbies, fleeting relationships, anything to avoid facing the depth of their own heartache. Yet no distraction is ever enough. The person they are obsessed with lingers in their mind like a ghost they cannot exorcise. They suffer because they miss someone they told themselves they didn't need. They suffer because they can't go back, and they can't fully let go. And what makes it worse is that they often believe they have no right to feel this pain. After all, they were the ones who withdrew. They were the ones who built the wall, who closed the door. So they suffer in silence, telling themselves it's too late, that they chose this. But the heart doesn't follow logic, and the one they obsess over continues to haunt their thoughts, not as a memory to be boxed away, but as a presence that lives in the gaps of their daily life. They might try to reach out, to test the waters with a cautious message or a subtle gesture. But when they don't get the response they hope for, the pain intensifies, not because of rejection, but because it reaffirms their deepest fear, that the connection they longed for is gone, and that maybe they were never truly lovable to begin with. That's the cruel voice that haunts the avoidant. Not just that, they lost someone, but that the loss confirms something broken in them. So they retreat again, deeper this time, building stronger walls, convincing themselves that silence is safer. But safety is not peace. Avoidants are not at peace. They are experts at appearing fine, at pretending they've moved on. But their obsession shows in their eyes when no one's looking, in the hesitation before deleting a message, in the way they pause on a familiar name. They ache, they remember, they miss. And because they won't admit it, not to themselves, not to others, they carry a weight that grows heavier by the day, silent, secret, and almost unbearable. Within the heart of the avoidant lies a path, though often hidden and difficult to see, that leads out of their cycle of obsession and fear toward healing and wholeness. The obsession with this one person is not a permanent sentence but a symptom, a signpost pointing to something deeper, the need to confront the wounds that keep them trapped. Healing begins when the avoidant acknowledges their fear of intimacy, not as a weakness but as a part of their story, something that happened to them, not something that defines them. It begins with the courage to sit with discomfort, to face the longing without running, to accept that being known is not the same as being destroyed. This journey toward healing requires truth and grace. Truth to see the patterns for what they are, to recognize the ways avoidance has protected but also imprisoned them. Grace to forgive themselves for the mistakes, the pushing away, the walls built in desperation to survive. It also means embracing vulnerability as a strength, not a threat. Vulnerability becomes the doorway through which genuine connection passes, the bridge from obsession to peace. The person avoidants are obsessed with is, in many ways, a mirror reflecting what they most fear and most need: authentic love. The way forward is not easy. It calls for patience from themselves and from those they love. It calls for trust even when trust feels impossible. And it calls for hope. Hope that love can be safe, that connection can be healing, that they can live without running. When avoidants walk this path, their obsession transforms. It shifts from being a painful fixation on what is lost or feared to becoming a guiding light toward freedom. It shows them that real love does not demand perfection or control, but offers acceptance and belonging. Ultimately, the obsession reveals a heart that is not closed, but longing. Longing not just for one person, but for the freedom to be fully alive in relationship. And that is the beginning of true healing. As we have seen today, the story of the avoidance obsession is a story of the heart's deepest struggle, the battle between fear and longing, between walls built for protection and the desperate desire to be truly known and loved. It is a journey marked by pain, silence, and hidden suffering. But it is also a journey filled with hope, because even in their obsession, avoidants reveal something profoundly human: the need for connection, the need to be seen and accepted, just as they are. This truth invites us all to look beyond the surface, to understand that those who seem distant or detached are often fighting invisible battles. It challenges us to extend patience, compassion, and grace, not only to others but also to ourselves. And it reminds us that no matter how broken or afraid we may feel, there is always a way toward healing and freedom. So if you find yourself caught in this cycle, whether as the avoidant or as the one they cannot stop thinking about, know this: obsession need not be a prison. It can be the doorway to a new beginning, a deeper love, and a fuller life. May you have the courage to walk through that door, to face your fears, and to embrace the healing that awaits. Thank you